at Luke chapter 12, verse 13. Someone in the crowd said to Jesus, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." Jesus replied, "Man, who made me a judge or divider between you?" And then he said to them, "Watch out, be on your guard against all kinds of greed. A man's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions." You see, Jesus was speaking about a kingdom of justice and fairness and love. And so here comes this guy who believes that he's been defrauded by his own family, by his own brother, of a just share of the inheritance. And so he comes to Jesus, the righter of wrongs. And he says, "Come on, tell him to be loving and kind towards me." And Jesus refuses to get involved. Isn't that interesting? He says, "Who made me a judge or a divider?" He said, "It's not my job. It's not my job." And maybe you sort of reply to that as well. Jesus didn't want to be mixed up with financial considerations. Dirty money. That sounds honourable enough, doesn't it? A bit like you might say, religion shouldn't be concerned with politics. They don't mix. But they do. They do, don't they? Because they're connected. They're not directly connected, but they're indirectly connected. It's like saying building houses doesn't have anything to do with climatology. Well, no, it doesn't directly. But if you build an igloo in the Sahara Desert, it does have an immediate effect. It's got an indirect effect because, religion is like the air in which politics happens, and climatology is the air in which I build my house. So they are really, really connected, one to the other, but not quite directly. So the connection, it's like the spiritual environment. So Jesus is talking spiritual environment, and he's talking building houses. Do you see what I'm saying? And of course, in Revelation it says the kingdom of this world will become the kingdom of the Christ. So there is a connection between the two. But Jesus isn't going to be cornered into being like a scolding daddy with two naughty children. He's not going to be the idea of that. It's just foolish, isn't it? But that's it, you see, the idea. Jesus gives us the idea, and then he says, you go figure it out for yourself. If all people are equal, if there is neither male nor female, now you figure it out for yourself. If there's neither slave nor free, now figure it out for yourself. You see, he gives us the principle. Here's the principle. He says, render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, render to God the things that are God's. And now he says, now what does that mean? That's pretty political, isn't it, after all? Now what does that mean for you? The principle is love. So what does love mean in this situation? I mean, imagine if he'd given direct guidelines about how to do this and how to do that and how to do that. Then it would just be finite. It would just be limited to one culture, one society, one time. But instead he gives us principles. Love one another as you want them to love you. Deal with one another in that way. He gives us eternal principles. Non-specific, universal principles. And so Christianity never gets obsolete, never runs out of steam, because it's to do with a much bigger issue. And by refusing to get involved in this little icky-picky little bits of nonsense, he's showing that the kingdom is about principles and it's within. It's not about procedure on the outside. So what does that mean? I mean, really, the two men should have been able to figure it out for themselves, shouldn't they? About the inheritance. And so he deals with love, mutual giving, and the inner peace, and that's what the kingdom is, not the outward amount. So maybe both were wrong. Maybe one's bullying his way, give me the money, and the other's envious and grabby. So supposing you'd done it then, supposing you'd taken it from one guy and given it to the other, what does that mean? It just means it turns into retaliation, doesn't it? Nah, I got it. Oh, that's not fair. That's not. It turns into a big, foolish squabble. So what's the game in reprimanding the bully and rewarding the grasper? Who wins? Nothing's changed. Oh, wait a minute. Suppose the guy who's come to Jesus is completely right. Okay? And the other guy's a crook. And so Jesus goes to the guy who's completely in the right and said, yes, you're right. So what does that do? The one who was cheated now feels a bit smug and vindicated. And the one who bullied his way has been found out and has been humiliated. So what happens next? I want to say something. I believe this. God doesn't reward his followers with limousines and swimming pools. Is that right or what? Come on. The concerns have got to be a little bit bigger, a little bit higher. Otherwise it just sounds like the whine of a child saying it's not fair. Ultimately, it's selfishness both ways. And Jesus refused to be the friend of one because ultimately he was the friend of both. He's not the friend of a certain class of people, a certain race of people. He's the Son of Man, the Son of humanity, not the rich or the poor. He's family and the recognition of family, and we really are in this together. And we grab for justice and we love to legislate. But Jesus goes to the heart of it and he says, you just watch out for any kind of greed and the pull, the lust and the greed for things and material possessions. And it was covetousness which made the unjust brother withhold the inheritance, and it was covetousness that made the just brother, maybe, to grab for it. It's the same thing. It's the bottom of all lawsuits, all social grievance, all political factions. And James said, from whence cometh your wars and fightings? Come they not hence even from the lusts which reign in your hearts? To translate it from the Elizabethan. Covetousness is a killer. And the word is very strong. It means more. It means the craving for more. And so, what's the answer? And Jesus says, what shall it profit a man if he gains the whole world and lose his soul? And you know, if you go to the reading of a will, some very strange emotions come out in the reading of a will, don't they? I remember reading this thing that J. John said about, somebody said to him, how much did he leave? And J. John said, well, everything. Everything. You can't take it with you. You say, but I'm oppressed, I'm defrauded, it's not fair. But you can't expect material rewards for a spiritual kingdom. Have I got that wrong? What do you think? Figure it out. God bless you today.